What's happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. We are here today. We're going to be talking about some really, you hear the word often, but do you really know what it is? Kim Daly has spent the past 20 years helping people achieve financial freedom by enabling them to find the perfect franchise opportunities. Her skill for matching a client's background, interests, skills, finances, and life goals to the ideal opportunity has made her one of the top franchise consultants in the country. Today, we are here to gain insights into what can seem like a daunting process, deciding on the perfect franchise to help you gain financial freedom. Kim, that's I hear the word often, but I don't know that I even know. I mean, I think I know what a franchise is, but I'm probably like the rest of the world where I really don't get it. Is that kind of how it goes?
Yeah, that's where the conversation usually starts, Jam. Well, somebody will be like, "Well, I see that line at Chick-fil-A. I think I'd want to own one of those." I'm like, "All right, let's talk about what we're really doing when we invest in a franchise, and it's probably not going to be Chick-fil-A."
All right, so let's get into how you got to where you got to. First off, I'm guessing you got into a franchise. That's how you started, but maybe I'm way off. Maybe you just started being a consultant, but I'm guessing that's not the story.
I actually started as an entrepreneur, but even before that, I worked for a franchise consulting company. So in our industry, JM, people will say, like, how did franchising find you? Because it's not really like people wake up and go, oh, yeah, my dream is to be into franchising. It's more like we're looking to create an outcome in our lives. We stumble upon franchising and connect the dots and go, oh, I think I can get there using this as the kind of like the vehicle. So I was on my way to medical school. I answered a classified ad in the newspaper for a franchise consulting company, not the one that I'm part of today. And it literally changed the whole trajectory of my life. It didn't really, though, as I kind of reflect back now that I'm older. When I was 15 years old, I told my parents, I want to be a motivational speaker. My parents were involved in network marketing and would take me to all those like rah rah sessions. And I would watch the person on the stage and I'd be like, I want to be that person. Like, how do you do that except through network marketing? So I decided I'd go to medical school and I'd help people and, change people's lives that way. But look at me. All these years later, I ended, back up sort of right where I always said I wanted to be when I was 15, motivating people, inspiring people, speaking to people every day.
I love that. I mean, look, there's no linear path to anywhere you're going. And yet at the same time, you spoke it into the universe and now you are inspiring people. You are helping people. You said something interesting. You said, I was an entrepreneur and then into franchising. So is there a difference of the two? Because when I think of franchise, I do think of an entrepreneur spirit taking that on. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yep, that's a great differentiation. So I started out starting a business on my own, like had an idea, had to create the marketing, had to define the customer, had to figure out how to make it go, did all of that all by my lonesome, right? Like being an entrepreneur is very lonely. And I lived that life. I did it for 5 years. I was relatively successful, but what I just said was I was really, really tired of like working by myself. I knew I wanted to be self-employed, but when you turn to franchising, you find that it's this very collaborative thing. So first of all, we're not inventing anything. We're taking somebody else's proven business plan, right? There, we're paying them a fee, and that allows us to buy down that learning curve of starting a business, which can be so hard, right? Most businesses fail before their fifth anniversary, mainly because they run out of money, but because most entrepreneurs, I think there's just so much trial and error to figuring out a business. They never really get to the point where they're making money, never mind building wealth, right? Scaling and building wealth. But in a franchise business, you can start with the end in mind. Like, I want to replace my corporate salary. I'm looking for this kind of income. We can do the due diligence. We can look at the average unit volumes of franchises and say, okay, what you're trying to create, you're going to need 3 of those long term, but you can go in sort of with that plan and that path and the training and the support. So you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have prior experience. And you also don't have to be out there wandering around in the wilderness by yourself. There's people that you can pick up the phone and call and ask for help and support and guidance all along the way.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur myself, it sure feels like you're going to avoid a lot of bumps, bruises, scrapes along the way. Not to say that you're not going to have challenges. Of course, any business, you're going to have challenges. And they're giving you, I'm guessing, a playbook to say, look, this is how our model works. This is why you're not going to go waste hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing or buy the wrong thing from the wrong supplier. So they're going to save you some of this. Why aren't more people, and maybe there's numbers, I'm not in the franchise world, but maybe I should be. Why am I not in the franchise world? Maybe I'm missing the boat here.
Well, there's a lot of people who say yes to the dream to own a franchise every year because I've been doing this full time for 20 years and I have helped thousands of people go down this path, hundreds to go on to become successful franchise owners. I think, Jam, it just depends on where you are. Like, are you working for the man and you've just never thought that you could own a business because you didn't have prior business experience? Or maybe you're an investor and you turn to rental properties and because you could do that with other businesses. But in a franchise, there are some franchises where you don't even have to leave your full-time job to be full-time in the franchise. We have options that are called semi-absentee, where the franchisor can help you train a manager to be the kind of boots on the street, if you will, or that acting day-to-day person in the business so that you can be the CEO, managing the team and managing the strategy and managing the vision of the company, working on it while your team works in it, and you can still have a job, if you will. So I think it just the question of, why aren't more people? I think a lot of people do think about franchising. I think it's the limiting beliefs of I don't have enough money, or hey, franchises, they've heard somebody failed in a franchise and it's a scam, so I better not put my money in that. They don't ever actually reach out to someone like me to get educated and see what the facts are for themselves and maybe find a business that's better than the one their friend failed in, or that person, oftentimes failure in a franchise is spouted as correlated to the franchisor's fault. But in my 20 years of experience, failure in a franchise is not correlated so much to the franchisor as it is to individual franchisees who just don't execute. They don't show up personally, professionally, or financially. They just don't execute in a way that produces a successful outcome.
So, Kim, you're telling me that there's people that didn't do what they said they were going to do? I find that hard
You
to
see how carefully I walked around that, Jay? I'm like, if you're watching the video, I'm like, oh, it's a very touchy subject. And I spend a lot of time educating people. I have a whole YouTube channel dedicated to these types of topics because they are very sensitive. People's life savings,
believe.
and not just that, but their heart and soul. When they say yes to the dream to own a franchise, they are changing their lives. And when it gets harder than they thought, or they had an expectation that doesn't get met, or oftentimes, JM, people that don't work with someone like me, they go in thinking that it's the franchisor's job to make them successful. And when they had this reality check, like, oh, shoot, I have to be accountable to me. Sometimes that's a crushing blow. And why do franchises fail? If we're asking that question, I mean, it's a multifaceted answer. There's no one answer. And one person will say that, like the franchisee will say, this is the reason I failed. And the franchisor's perspective on that person is usually a little bit different. The truth is probably in the middle.
Well, but you also brought up something that's fascinating to me, because this is so much fun because I don't know the franchise world. So I get to ask lots of questions just simply out of sheer curiosity. You mentioned the absenteeism, I believe you called it. I'm sure there is being full owner operator in that franchise. Tell me all the various options. Not that you're even looking to sell me on it, but I kind of want to be sold on this to be like, all right, JM, you have, I don't know, 500 grand to go towards something. Where would you go with it? Now, I asked several questions in there, but I'm just kind of, this is an open forum to be like, I want to know more. I want to know more about why I missed the boat or why I've missed the boat thus far.
Okay, well, so let me just start there. So yeah, I don't think you missed any boat. I think that franchising is an opportunity for the average person to become a business owner and to be able to scale and build wealth faster than most entrepreneurs do. Statistically, that is a true statement. Whether individuals do it or not is up to them.
Mm.
But because we have a proven business plan with a toolbox ready to go, we can execute from day one, buying down that learning curve, moving toward profitability, and then again, having the opportunity to scale to build the wealth, because wealth is always created through scale, right? If you're a real estate investor, it's never about one roof. It's about how do I scale my time and manage multiple roofs? The same thing in a franchise. The scale can be built through teams of people. So think like a cleaning company where you're going to be looking at revenue per team. Think the scale can be built through equipment or trucks. So think like a 1-800 got junk business. That's a franchise. So you're looking at revenue per truck, or the traditional brick and mortar model, a Massage Envy, a Planet Fitness, anything that has the storefront location where we're looking at revenue per location. And then we want to multiply that to get to kind of the level of wealth that we want to build through the franchise. So that's the latter part of what you said. It's franchising is that, and I think people wake up to it when they have a turning point in their lives, or they're invested enough in real estate. They're looking for diversification. They've been laid off from corporate America typically through no fault of their own. And they're like, you know what? I'd be a fool to go back, or at least to go back and only do that. And franchising, because of the semi absentee options, affords those business owners the opportunity to do both a job and a business. Whereas if you were to break off and start your own business from scratch, you really wouldn't have that opportunity. So the first part of what you said is like, what is the scope of franchising? I mean, there are franchises in all levels of investment, from 30, 40, $50,000 to 3, 4, $5 million, and everywhere in between. So one of the very first conversations I have with candidates who come to me asking for help, that's what I do with the people every day, is we get very real about money. So money is the number one reason people come to me. They're trying to create more money, more cash flow, but it's also the number one reason people don't move forward. So
Mm.
years ago, I figured out that if I could sort of bring out the elephant in the room in a very vivid way and explain to people what their money buys and how that could correlate to a return, again, dancing around earnings claims because I don't make them, then it would help people within about 20 or 30 minutes who really couldn't afford to do it walk away, but with a greater understanding of when to call me back, right? I'm never going to squelch your dream. We just might have to put the dream on hold until you feel ready to invest in the type of business that you want to invest in and have that capital. But there are also tons of financing resources. So we can also explore those before we shelf the idea too. But let's say that you have the money to do it. You know, just because you have the money doesn't mean you want to spend the money. So there are, as you mentioned, full-time ownership where you can dive in, roll up your sleeves. That doesn't mean that if you have a cleaning company, you're cleaning houses. It means you're the manager of teams of people in a business that cleans other people's houses, right? So we're always looking at the executive style business owner, not a roll up your sleeves owner operator. I'm an HVAC licensed technician and I'm going to open an HVAC franchise. I want the sales and marketing guy running the HVAC business, hiring the HVAC guy to come in as a subcontractor to do all the jobs that he's out selling every day. Because therein lies why that HVAC guy is going to struggle, because he's not a sales guy, right? He doesn't really like interacting with the customer stereotypically. He wants to just do the job. But when we have these franchises in trades where the business owner, the franchisee, can be the one driving a marketing plan or going out with a sales team and finding big commercial jobs and landing the job, or even residential jobs, then bringing the guys in who have that license or that technical trade to do the work, whether they be employees or subs. Now we have a winning formula where we see people in the trades building 1 million, 5 million, $20 million operations, but where they don't know anything about the trade. And maybe any of their quote technical employees don't even know anything about the trade, right? If they're using subs. So you can really build wealth in many ways. Again, full-time, semi-absent. There's even this thing called a regional developer, JM. So A regional developer, everybody who gets into franchising very quickly realizes that, wow, I want to be the franchisor, because the franchisor, you pay them for the business plan and they get you up to speed, and then they're collecting a percentage of your monthly revenue every month called a royalty, right? So franchisees see that, 8% or whatever they're giving back to the corporate office, and they're like, well, as I get smart and don't really need them, but still have to pay them, like they're kind of on the winning end. Now, that's a whole nother conversation. There's value, but that's not what I'm trying to get to. So this regional developer opportunity is an opportunity for a person to be like a sub franchisor, where you come in and let's say you live in a market like Chicago or Dallas or San Francisco, and you buy the market. And let's say that it's a brick and mortar thing, like Massage Envy was built this way. So let's say that they define Chicago as a 45 store market. So you pay a very, very reduced franchise fee for all 45 licenses. Say you pay 10,000 per license. So you pay 450 to own the market, if you will. And then you work with consultants and the franchisor and you develop your own organic leads. And little by little, you're selling those stores to franchisees for the full franchise fee. But as you help them get their stores open, you're the acting support on the ground, if you will, then you get to collect a portion of that royalty ongoing and ongoing. And let me tell you, franchisees really are like raising kids. Like I'm raising teenage boys right now. So when they were little, they were super needy, but now they're 15 and 16. They're just like, Mom, leave us alone. Right? So, but when you're the regional developer, whether they want you or not, you still get to collect that portion of the royalty. And that can be a beautiful long-term annuity that over time doesn't require as much time as for you to make that money, kind of what we call the mailbox money, not to make it too simplified, but you know what I mean? So there's all levels of investment. It's just a conversation that's worth having if you're interested in business, doing something local in your market in some capacity. We could go in so many different ways with it.
Yeah, and I think that's where my mind goes is, how do you select the right franchise for your background, your interests, your goals? That's your job, I'm guessing. But how do you go about and say, all right, JM, you're looking to, I don't know, whatever my life goal would be at the moment, sip margaritas on the beach, and you're like, okay, this is what this looks like. This is a real skill that you have, because again, we're dealing with real dollars, whether you're financed or not. The challenge, I suppose, is let's get into a franchise, but you're marrying a business. This is like, okay, this is my baby that I'm going to nurture and grow, hopefully. Yeah, how do you go about that? There's quite a bit to that.
There is a lot to it. And in fact, is why franchisors pay me to offer my service. So I don't think we've said this to date or yet, but my services are entirely free for anybody who wants to, want my help. The reason listen, when you look at any business, like prospecting for good candidates is like the bottom line. Franchisors pay me to be the prospector. Let's cut to the chase. I'm the recruiter, if you will, of people that match the skill sets they're looking for, have the financial capability, and live in markets that they have open for growth. So that's why they pay me to offer my service. Now, for you, the candidate who's listening, what I'm going to do for you is, a lot of times when people think about owning a business, they think about what they know or what they're passionate about, or maybe what their community needs. Like, oh man, we really need a UPS store here. But if the UPS store doesn't involve skills that you have or enjoy, doing, or doesn't make you the kind of money that you would want for the investment of time and money, you're not going, no matter how much or how successful that UPS store is in the community and how much it's needed, it's not necessarily going to be a fulfilling and satisfying experience for you. So when people come to me, JM, and we start typically at passion, like I love fitness, or I love dogs, or and I'm like, okay, that's great. But here's what I'm going to say. If I find you the greatest fitness business in the world and you never make any money or ever get to that place where you can be sipping the Mai Tai on the beach or whatever the drink is, are you going to be happy in that fitness business? And people are immediately like, no. Okay. But let's say that there's a business that initially you don't know anything about. You don't even know if you'd be passionate about it, but you can apply a skill set that you have, a confident skill set that you have, things that you enjoy doing. If you're a leader of people and that's the primary skill necessary in a particular business, and in the product or service fills a need or a want in the community that you can identify and say, wow, people are spending money on that. And you see the financial capability that allows you to scale this thing through people and through systems to get to that time freedom. So you get money and time. Guess what happens? The passion for that widget goes sky high. So when people come to me, we're going to start wherever they are. But my goal is to try to open their mind, at least to explore. It doesn't mean I don't bring things that people are passionate about, like fitness and dogs. But it means if we're only going for that, it's very limiting. And ultimately, when you invest in a franchise, I am infinitely more interested, number one, in your outcomes. Where do you want this business to take you personally, professionally, and financially? That has to align first. But the second most important thing is the relationship, because the whole idea of investing in a franchise is you're going into business for yourself, but not by yourself. So therein lies, you've got to find people that have a culture, that have a proven track record that makes you feel confident that they're your people, that have a culture that you fit in, that you feel you can thrive in, that you can learn from. Because if there's not that, you might as well go be an entrepreneur. So if I have a business that has great leadership and a track record that matches, and on top of all of that, matches something you're excited and passionate about, that's the best of the best of the best. But the others, the partnership, the quality of the partnership, and the business meeting your personal, professional, and financial goals is much more interesting and satisfying to me. And ultimately, I've proven it to be satisfying to many, many, many now franchise owners over 20 years than starting from the other place. Does that even make sense?
That makes total sense. Like, I'm in. I'm like, it's free. You get to work with Kim. She's gonna set you up to win. I don't know. What's the catch? Maybe that's the word. You know what I mean? It's like,
Sure.
obviously this sounds amazing. And I have so many questions. I have, what was the first franchise? And you own a franchise. We're going to talk about that, but where am I missing this? Because literally I don't believe I've ever been presented with a franchise, and I've never seeked it out, but I'm like, this is awesome. And your job's pretty cool that you get to set people up to go win every single day. It's pretty awesome. I mean, my company's name is Let's Go Win. That's what you're doing. It's awesome.
That's why we're together today, JM. It's so true. No, I totally agree. I am like one of the luckiest people in the world to do what I do for 20 years. It's why I'm so passionate about it. If there is a catch to franchising, I think it's that, look, you said it. Owning a business, even in a franchise, is hard. I think that, the tendency is, again, for people to think that, well, I'm buying a franchise, so it's going to be easy. No, because no matter how proven the franchise is, you still have your own learning curve that you have to be willing to go through. And sometimes that means growing through valleys and not quitting. Sometimes it means losing money to figure out how to make money, even in a franchise. So that's the catch, that this is owning a business, and it's accountability, and it's owning it. People love to own it when it's successful, but in a franchise, the scapegoat is always the franchisor. In fact, it's one of the reasons I started a YouTube channel and started spreading the word about franchising, was to not to protect franchisors, but to kind of stick up for franchisors, to be like, look, own it. Own it when it's good, but own it when it's bad, because it's yours. It's not the franchisor's job to help you, to make you successful. It's their job to help you, but only you. And what, in my personal story, we'll weave this in, and I'll tell you about the business I'm in is a franchise. So I'm like a franchisee of a company called FranChoice, and we help people invest in franchises. So I'm trained by a corporate office up in Minneapolis, and I pay a royalty back to franchise. So I live the life of a franchisee. But here's the thing. I spent 8 years in my business. The first 8 years, I've been doing this since 2002. I was such a young little girl when I started. and what did I know about life? Anyway, back in 2002, when I started this, I was trained by franchise, and I spent the first 8 years in my business producing what I would call an average consultant return. I was happy. I didn't know anything different. But then I decided I got a little uncomfortable in my life. I was ready for growth, and I decided to create something different. And those are the key words. I decided. So I was the same me. Franchise was the same process. But 1 year later, in 2011, I made history in my industry, not just in franchise, in all the franchise consulting history. I built the largest franchise consulting business that had ever been imagined. So when I did that, I had this huge aha moment about so many things in franchising. Like in franchising, JM, before you say yes, you're going to go out and you're going to get to talk to other owners. And people are like, I want to talk to the people who are failing, like as if they're going to learn something positive from the people who it's not working out for. Well, okay. So I never really I always emotionally said, I don't know if that's a good idea, but I didn't really know intellectually why that was a good idea until I stood in the average group and then in the history making group. Because once I became a history maker, and really not even the first year, Jam, it was like the second or the third year that I continued to grow that history making result to where I felt I had a science to what I did, because I wasn't a one-hit wonder. I could reproduce it. I knew exactly where the levers in my business were to push. So when I got there, then I really became a much better coach to all of my people, because now I could intellectualize. Well, okay, so I knew what I was doing when I was an average performing, but now I know exactly what I'm doing. So I know what's driving my success, but I equally know why people in my business will not be successful. So when you're not successful at something, you have your truth, but is it really the truth? No, because if you had the truth, wouldn't you turn it around? So it helped me in so many ways deliver so much more value. But all the while, I'm, helping all of these people live their dreams through franchising. I'm over here living mine, breaking my own history records, like, getting up every day when it's hard and doing it, and loving it when it's good. And so, I don't share my stories to brag. It's not about Kim Daly. It's to drive home the points, because when we speak from our own experience, it just comes from a more genuine place. It's not like, it's a theory I read in a book. It's like, you know what I really figured out through sweat and tears and years of trial and error? Let me see how long you got. Let's sit down and talk about it. Right?
Yeah, and that's the part that obviously that's not what sells. That's not what people are like. Yes, I want to hear about how it sucked. Kim, tell me how it sucked for a while, because that sounds awesome. I guess one of my questions.
Real.
No, it's 100% real. That's why this show is built the way it is. Like, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, because it's not all about the good, right? As an owner of a business, what the idea is distribution. I'm guessing they're saying, look, I want this business to scale.
Yep.
I want to share in this, and the fastest way, maybe it's not fastest, the most efficient way for me to grow my business is to do this through a franchise model.
Yes.
Is that kind of the idea when an owner reaches this conclusion?
Correct. You're using other people's money to grow your brand. So think of it, let's put ourselves in the franchisor's perspective. So let's say that you bring something to market. Every business out there every franchise started as an entrepreneurial idea that was flushed out through a lot of years and experience and trial and error, right? So now they've got it to where they've got standard operating procedures and manuals, and they feel they can train other people. So they decide the fastest way to grow our brand nationally is using other people's money. But they have their ideas through their own trial and error, of how people should execute and what you should do to be successful. So imagine the job of a franchisor when they are vetting candidates, because this isn't all about you. This is a mutual evaluation process. They don't have to award you a business. They are looking for people that are not just financially qualified, but that are coachable, that are fun to work with. Like if you come in all guns blazing and, argumentative and combative from day one, most smart franchisors are going to be like, hey, no amount of money in the world is worth dealing with you. Right. So it's a family. It's hey, we figured our business out to this point, but every business is a dynamic entity. It has to keep growing and changing to remain relevant. They're going to be using your experience out in the market every day to keep growing and adapting the market. So to think that the franchisor, it's like kids thinking their parents are superheroes and then growing up and realizing they're humans. You get in the franchise and you realize these people, they knew a certain amount when I said yes, but they are still making it up as they go, because that's business. And I think that's another huge aha moment for franchisees. If the franchise has been around for 50 years, maybe you don't have that kind of, but most of the businesses I work with, most people I work with, they don't want those big Titanics. They want the more emerging, nimble brands where they can come in and carve out the best markets in Denver or Atlanta, right? If you're in a 50-year-old brand, those markets are sold, right? They want to be the first one bringing it to market and maybe building it to that peak value and selling it off. So it's us all working together, franchisees and franchisors are picking, they're vetting people through this mutual evaluation process and awarding the opportunity to you, and then it's yours to buy.
Yeah, you just mentioned something that I think is important, and you mentioned building it up to then sell. Now, are we talking both the owner of the business and potentially the franchisor? Because I think this is an important thing for us to understand. You have equity now in this business, and now you have the opportunity to grow it and then potentially an exit plan. I'm guessing this is all part of how when you're consulting them on their life goals, this is stuff that you're going through and vetting out.
100% JM. Yes. A franchise business is yours to build and sell. And I believe in beginning with the end in mind. Now, there are some people that are building a legacy for their kids and they're looking for that business like a laundromat or something that's more long-term sustainable. But most of the time I say, look, let the legacy to your kids be the role model that you are, that you dared to leave the security of a job and follow your dream. Let the legacy for your kids be that they get to come into the business with their parents and help out on the weekend. That legacy is much stronger because statistically, the children of entrepreneurs have some way higher statistical average of going on to become entrepreneurs themselves. Because if you're a parent, our kids don't do what we say, they do what we do. For better or worse, they do what we do. So be the entrepreneur, be the franchise owner, and let that be the legacy. But yes, there are businesses you can be in for a long time. I'm not saying that, but I'm always coaching people down from that to kind of think a little more nimble. It's too weighty of a decision to try to control everything for the next 15 to 20 years. And you get stifled and you can't make a decision. So if we enter thinking, okay, let's get in, let's build something for 3, 5, maybe 7 years. Most franchise agreements are 10-year agreements. So you can re-up after that. But so you get in for 5 to 7 years, you get it up, you get it stable, you make it profitable, and then decide, what do I want to do with this? Because if you've entered at the beginning of a brand that became a rocket ship, like a Planet Fitness or a Massage Envy or an Orange Theory, there's a moment in time where every good territory in your market is sold, and the members that are working out in your club are going, how did you get into this? I want to own one, but there's no more to buy. And guess what? That's your greatest exit strategy moment. You can say, hey, I'll put a 6 multiple on mine. And if you're happy to pay it, I'm happy to sell it to you. And people did. I have friends in Planet Fitness that cashed out for 6. I had one friend that cashed out for an 8 multiple of 10 clubs. He was 58 years old and he walked away with 50 million, more than that, $50 million. Like, so like the brand equity that you're building, depending on the franchise, can have tremendous value. I've interviewed many, JanPro, which is one of the largest commercial cleaning companies in the world. These are reoccurring commercial cleaning accounts. Reoccurring revenue is very valuable to the next owner coming in, right? Because it's stable and consistent and predictable. And many of those JanPro owners have told me they had their greatest ROI when they sold their business. And that doesn't mean they weren't making millions of dollars all along the way either, right? So thinking through the exit is very important. And in some cases, the whole reason people do it.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. Again, I didn't know going in because I don't know anything about franchising, but I'm like, this is really cool. I'm curious. I'm going to totally put you on the spot because it's not in the topics, but do you know the first franchise that ever started? Who started this wave? I'm so curious. Do you know who that is?
I mean, the biggest first franchise anybody would ever know is Ray Kroc and McDonald's. But I don't know if technically that is the first franchise that was ever started. In the 70s is when the government stepped in and started regulating franchising. So we haven't talked anything about the regulation, but the Federal Trade Commission regulation over franchisors and the disclosure of information. It's one of the greatest consumer protection acts of all time, people will say. So prior to 1970, franchisors could, kind of like say whatever they wanted to say in terms of the investment or the earnings potential and, the kind of practices that sadly can still go on in licenses, distributorships, and business opportunities that are way less regulated. So this regulation makes franchising, quote, safer because the franchisor has to produce this franchise disclosure document, which is a legal document. It's a formatted, templated document that every year has to be filed with the Federal Trade Commission and really entitles you, the investor, to really full disclosure of the opportunity, sort of like reading the prospectus of a stock, sort of. But like if the founder of the franchise was involved in a bankruptcy, even in a company that's not related to the franchise, it has to be disclosed. So you get to know who you're like. I have one amazing franchise, and the guy is a serial entrepreneur. When you're a serial entrepreneur, you got to fail. And why that scares people looking at the franchise is beyond me. I'm like, that makes him a safer franchisor in my mind, because if you've never skidded out and come back, like Tony Robbins, he was a millionaire and then he was bankrupt and then he was a millionaire again. Like so many stories are built on people who've won big, lost big, and then figured out how to win big again. To me, that's a better partner. But in this franchise disclosure document is, there's no hidden fees. Everything is disclosed. There's all the failure the franchise has for the past 3 years has to be disclosed. If the franchisor is being sued or has been sued within the last 5 years by franchisees, that has to be disclosed. If they've ever sued a franchisee, that has to be disclosed. So one of my coaching calls is dedicated to kind of making your way through these very kind of weighty, ominous legal documents that I kind of equate to the prenup of the marriage, and to sort of make it lighter and help people not make such a big deal of it. Because at the end of the day, it's about the relationship, not the legalese. But the legalese has to be there because when you put people and money together and things don't go right, people go crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so the franchisor ultimately has to protect the integrity of their brand and the opportunity for all of the people who it is working out for at that moment, from the one or few people who it's not working out for, but who've decided to blame their lack of success on the franchisor and who decided to sue.
Got it.
And you know what? Listen, let me say this. Sometimes it really is the franchisor's fault. I'm just blessed to play with some of the best franchisors out there, where very, very rarely in my 20-year history has there been mass, letdown where franchisees had the legal, should have sued and won. Most of the time it's franchisee created, not franchisor created in my world.
No, it's beautiful. It's a marriage and you vetted this out, like you are compatible. Actually, if marriages did this, we would have a greater success rate. I'm not kidding. You mentioned Chick-fil-A. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask top 5 franchises today that are just like when you look at it, you're like, whoa, those are the big dogs. I think if I'm a listener, listen, I want to know what they are because I don't.
Okay. So I'm gonna be a little evasive, Tam, on that question. So I don't really have favorite franchises. I have favorite characteristics. So I am not your girl if you're looking for food. And there are very strong reasons for that. On my YouTube channel, I have videos where I explain it in detail. If we work one-on-one, I will explain it in even greater detail. But the long and short is food has the highest failure rate of all SBA loans. It has too many moving parts for the average person. It doesn't bring quality of life and doesn't make people the kind of money that they assume when they see the line out the door and they assume that makes tons of money. That's not always the case, especially when we factor in time commitment, stress levels, number of moving parts compared to other types of businesses where we have low fixed costs. I am the queen of low fixed costs, meaning even if nobody's coming in, I'm not bleeding to keep my doors open. This was a very good philosophy in 2020, but it's been a good philosophy for 20 years. Low fixed costs, reoccurring, predictable revenue. When I interview owners who are struggling in their business and they're losing sleep, what is the problem? Because they don't have a predictable way to earn money. It keeps them awake at night. So when we wrap a business in a membership, oh, it changes everything because now we have clear goals. If you can pay all of your bills with 200 members, well, then game on. Let's get to 200 members and maintain that. But then what happens when you get to 300, 500, 800 members? What happens is your bottom line that maybe started out at 10 or 15% starts to grow to 20, 25, 30%. So on $1 million in top line revenue, you're not stuck at 10% netting 100. You might see people who are netting 300,000 in that same business just based on that growth beyond those fixed costs. So I've thought through this conversation for so many years that of course 80% of the people or more come to me thinking it's going to be food. And if you really want it, I'll bring it. But very, very few people will end up there, especially once they see the world the way I see it, meet the people that I know, and they get educated on how to really think about this to be a successful, happy, relaxed, business owner who has a quality of life, not a total stress, business.
You have exhausted my questions on franchising. You are
Possible.
amazing with all of your answers, and they're thorough, they're well thought out, you bring an amazing energy. I want to give you just open form. Anything I didn't know enough to ask you where you're like, hey man, you should have known to ask this one. Anything I didn't know enough to ask, Kim, anything you want to share with the audience that before we kind of wrap this up?
Yeah, you know what, Jim, you did a great job. It's more fun talking to a host who doesn't know about franchising because you're coming from the exact same place that 99% of the people I start with are coming from. So this conversation becomes more relevant to their ears, and I appreciate that. It's awesome. The last thing that I would bring in is, the moment we're in starting 2022 is, all this uncertainty that we felt. I dealt with uncertainty more in the fourth quarter of 2022 than I have in probably since the recession of 2008 when I started to build my history making business. And it was shocking in the beginning, and then it was like, okay, this is just what it is. And people are asking is now the right time? And my answer to that is there's a couple of ways to answer that. Number one, if you are ready to change your life, you cannot wait on the economy because the economy's got to be able to do what it's going to do. If you're going to own a business for 5 to 10 years, you can't control the economy the whole time. So you enter where you enter, knowing that business gets easier and it's harder, but you're doing it with, for yourself, but not by yourself. And if you're partnering yourself with people who've been through the recession of 2008, or maybe even all the way back to 2002 after 9/11, that was a recession of sorts, right? So if you're partnering yourself with people that have a track record, they know the answers, they can help you get comfortable that they can adapt the model, you can survive. And so there's that. But the bigger thing is just that, look, our dreams don't wait. If you say, I'm not going to do it now, I'm going to come back in 6 months, you're lying to yourself. It's like telling yourself in October, I'm going to join the gym on January 1. If you're not going to join the gym, then you're not going to join the gym on January 1. So it's just, if you're ready, it's go time. We have businesses that are essential services. We have businesses that are more fun and sexy, and even franchisors in fun, sexy businesses who can show you why, even in an uncertain time, consumers are still spending money. But that's where the conversation begins. You come with an open heart and an open mind. We'll have some fun. I'll introduce you to some great people. And at the end of the day, if it's not the right thing for you, no is a perfectly acceptable good answer.
I do believe you're living your best life. I tell you, you get to meet amazing people and help them, fulfill their dreams. I love what you said. If you're ready, it's go time. There is no perfect time. I don't know how to sum it up any better. Kim, for those that hear this, they're crazy if they don't come talk to you, because I'm going to afterwards. What's the best place to connect with you online, or just to find out more about how you're doing what you're doing? Because I think it's remarkable.
Oh, thank you so much. I am very passionate about my YouTube, all my videos, my long form YouTube. I am on all the socials, but if you go to YouTube and type in Kim Daly, Daly, or just from your browser, kimdaly.tv, I have over 500 videos on all of the topics we've talked about today and more, and then some. And from there, you can go to my Instagram and LinkedIn, and of course, my email address, my website will all be present for you in the description. So check out some of my videos. I even have interviews with top performing franchisors, some of those top franchises, but then also, more importantly, I think they're franchisees, because hearing it from the franchisor is one thing, like hearing it from mom is one thing, but hearing it from like coach, that's a whole nother level of like, we should work out, mom. Right. So franchisee stories typically speak louder, and I have lots of interviews with some really fun franchisees. So please go to my YouTube channel, Kim Daly, Daly.tv.
Yeah, go check it out. I'm also raising 2 teenage boys, so I wish you the best in that regard. They're awesome and they suck all at the same time. No, they're amazing, but I feel your pain. So thank you for being here. This was really, really fun. I didn't necessarily know. I was like, oh, I'll have, 30 minutes. I have an hour and a half more of questions. You're awesome. And thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know what else to say, guys. She literally, I'm still looking for the problem. If you believe in yourself, you have some goals, you have a proven model, go talk to Kim. I think check out her videos at the very least, and share this with someone. This was so cool. I'm really happy I did this today. Until next time, remember, your mindset matters. I appreciate you guys so very much. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.